Okay, so hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode. Welcome to Coffee Time Gyan. My name is Vivek. I have my colleague Aditya here, and today we are joined by another friend of ours, the great Miss Parichita, litigator extraordinaire who has joined us for this very special episode on Roe versus Wade. Parichita, welcome to the show.
Hi Vivek, hi Adi. Thank you so much for having me here.
So how are you doing?
I'm well, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. So we have a very difficult topic that we intend to cover today, and so we wanted to have you on our side to do that.
So I see.
Yeah.
Makes my Sunday quite productive, to be honest.
So Vivek, you are gonna start by introducing.
Yeah. So basically, what normally happens is you ask questions, and I am the one who narrates. In this episode, I'm gonna make things interesting, and I'm going to play the.
So are
Quizmaster.
you blaming me for not making it interesting enough? What do you want me to do? Tell me,
Make today interesting. So I'm the quizmaster today. But before
Great.
I get to the quizzes, let me just give everybody a very deep and detailed understanding of the subject matter that we are going to talk about. So, the main topic for today's conversation is the Roe v. Wade judgment. Now, if you've been living under a rock or otherwise, you would have known what has been going, not only in the electronic media, but also the widespread and very dynamic sort of changes that has been happening surrounding the outcome of a follow-up case that impacted and changed, you could say, the lives of millions of Americans post this judgment that recently came out. Now, I'll come to the current judgment that has come out in a little bit, but let me give you a background on what is Roe versus Wade. So, Roe versus Wade, you could say, has been one of the pivotal landmark judgments of the United States, which supported and allowed American citizens the right to have privacy in respect of the God-given rights, you can say, to make a decision about their body. And this is for women in specific as it relates to abortions in the context of Roe v. Wade. So Roe v. Wade allowed women to, depending on the trimester that they were in, take independent decisions to get abortions if they so wish to, without having the state intervene. The background of this case is there was this person, Norma McCorvey, who we all popularly today known as Jane Roe, who in 1969, while living in Texas, got pregnant with a third child. At the point, Norma was unmarried, she was unemployed, and finding that she did not have the stability or the financial ability, to support the third child, she decided to undergo abortion in Texas. But what happened was there was a Texas law which strictly said that unless the life of the mother is in distress because of the pregnancy, she cannot get an abortion. Now Norma felt very enraged by this fact, and she felt that a grave injustice had been done to her, and she decided to challenge this law initially before the Texas District Court. This is in the year 1970. Now, while she made the challenge to this Texas law, the same was represented, like the Texas government rather, represented by Mr. Wade here, who was on the other side. And Mr. Wade is not the main character that you should be concerned about, but rather for Norma, the outcome of this judgment essentially was the Texas District Court felt that the Texas law that was there was very widespread and it was very vague. So not widespread, rather it was not concisely defined or precisely defined, and it was very vague. And it felt that the law needed certain changes. Now you would think as an ordinary citizen that if the court has said that, so Norma got her due justice. That was not the case. Because the Texas District Court just gave their opinion on the law. They did not give any concrete directions to allow Norma to get her abortion which she was seeking. Now what happened was this judgment by the District Court of Texas aggrieved Norma further, and then she took it up to the US Supreme Court, wherein the US Supreme Court came to her aid, and it stated that depending on the trimester a woman's pregnancy was at, they could take decisions by themselves, or it would be a state-assisted situation, which would determine whether or not she could get an abortion. So, if it was in the first trimester, the woman herself or her gynecologist could independently take a decision whether or not she should take the abortion. If it was in the second trimester, there were certain restrictions imposed by the state on when she could get an abortion, and in the third trimester, there was an absolute prohibition by the state against abortions. Right? Now, what happened was, this judgment came in favor of Norma in 1973, which is known as the main Roe v. Wade judgment, and for the main topic of this conversation. But what happened was, although this judgment was passed in 1973, since then there have been series of judgments by the US Supreme Court and a few state Supreme Courts of various other United Nations states as well, which has slowly but surely degraded the amount of relief or the quality of relief that was given in the main Roe v. Wade judgment. And we ultimately come here to the case of your Dobbs versus Jackson, wherein we see that what the judgment has given us is that it has essentially, we could say, overruled Roe v. Wade, and it has stated that laws in relation to abortion per se can rather should not be a matter of federal subject, and it should be up to the states for themselves to decide whether or not they can or cannot decide on the subject matter of abortion, like whether it be at the stage of inception or rather conception, which some states have decided, or whether it is at a later stage in a few months, right? And that has caused mass outrage. And with that context in mind, I would like to set the tone for this discussion. But before we delve deeper into this, so Parichita, Aditya, I would want you guys' thoughts on the matter. So Parichita, please let me know your thoughts and inputs around this, and then Aditya will come to you. Go ahead, Parichita.
Thank you, Vivek. So when I think about what has just happened in light of the recent judgment of the US Supreme Court, the first question that automatically comes to my mind is how this started. Why did this anti-abortion movement take shape in the US in the first place? And I actually did some reading on this after the Roe v. Wade judgment and after the overturning of the Roe v. Wade, if I must put it correctly. Mm-hmm. So it turns out that way back in 1840, abortion for the women in the US was not that big of a deal. It was a right women could exercise at their own discretion, and it was largely stigma-free. Now, turns out that the first anti-abortion advocates in the United States were male physicians who sought to make abortion illegal to push out competition from midwives and female healers. Now, that is apparently a thing. And the concept of...
it's business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the concept that, fetuses have rights which apparently trumps the rights of the women under whom those fetuses live. This is a fairly new concept which has evolved over largely the last 100 years or so in the United States. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we have come a long way since 1840, and I think today in 2022 we have probably gone further behind 1840 to think about it.
Absolutely. So I was saying absolutely, I agree with you on that. It's 50 years at least of judicial development that went down after Roe versus Wade, whichever direction that it might be, as Vivekda pointed, but there was some movement that was happening. But to say that completely overrule that sort of, Grundnorm in this matter at this point of time completely loses the form and shape that perhaps the pro-choice movement did take in the last 50 years. And per se, I believe I've never very strongly in opposition of any policy or for that matter, because usually I'm like waiting for myself to be in complete understanding of it. But this by far at a very, like a very prima facie look at it, you can say it's just all wrong. You can just say it's all wrong for the very simple reason, as like what Parichita also pointed out and what Vivikda has also pointed out previously, that regarding firstly your point regarding how the mother's choice regarding the matter, and there's actually a very funny interview I was watching regarding this, wherein one conservative party leader right after Roe had said that the mother has 1/3 right on that entire situation instead of her having the right towards like her own well-being in this matter. And there are several cases you realize where there are medical complications. There are like something Vivikda was pointing out before we started recording, that is like regarding rape victims, regarding domestic violence victims, people like that. So there's a lot of sort of space that is required to be filled, which will be filled with confusion, which will be filled with misinformation. And because also like the federal setup, it also becomes very difficult for people, say, living in various jurisdictions. So in some jurisdiction, again, you will be able to abort without any criminal liability. Again, in some states you won't be able to. Some states you will have, like, there is penalty for the doctors and stuff like that. So there's that amount of sort of distinction in between jurisdiction, I think, will also create a huge problem for US citizens in terms of not only even if there is any recourse or any remedy that is sort of possible, it becomes more difficult if you're sort of breaking it into various places and you're spreading it around that way.
So Aditya, so to your point, you make a very interesting statement regarding the messed up situation that is there right across the United States and the various geographies and states within it. But coming to that particularly, I had a question again for the both of you, and Parichita, you can take this up first, and I think you can come to it. Considering the fact that the original Roe versus Wade judgment was in the year 1973, right? And since then, we are almost at the precipice of 50 years. And since then, there has been a lot of developments, not only in the field of medical sciences, but also through technology and through, alternative forms of remedy and treatment, let's call it. Right. So there was a point in time where, we were all medical science meant cutting and hacking and, electric shocks and all of that to cure and treat people, right? From that, we've progressed a lot if we look at today. Correct. Now, considering the judgment and the nature of the effects of that judgment, right? So do you guys, either of you, and Parichita, you can take it up first and then Aditya, you can go. Do you guys see any novel solutions coming up to this, to tackle this problem? Because at the end of the day, as you would realize, that what has happened is a wrong that has been done to the people of the United States, right? And do you guys see any novel solutions coming up to address this outside of the law, but at the same time still legal?
So Vivek, I totally agree with you on what large-scale ramifications this decision is going to have.
Mm-hmm.
See, I have to tell you first that when it comes to a woman's right to abort a child, there cannot be a straitjacket law for like having a blanket cover for all women in a country. No, that is simply as illogical and as impossible as you can fathom. Because when it comes to pregnancy, it is again distinguished and distinct between two different persons. It cannot be afforded the same treatment. And the fact that the legislature has somehow thought that, okay, this is one law which is going to be applied across the country, that's just not possible. Because like Aditya also pointed out, that there are instances where there are complications for the mother when this has something to do where it's a victim of sexual abuse who has to abort a child necessarily, and a myriad of other cases and complications which may or may not arise where a fetus is probably underdeveloped or there is something, life-threatening for either the mother or the fetus, right? So, to have a law that's going to be applicable to everyone is just not the answer.
Absolutely.
When it comes to having a novel solution, this solution can only flow from this thinking that a right on one's body is one's own. As long as the politicians, the lawmakers try to enforce their beliefs and their ideologies on the bodies of other women, this novel solution is not going to arise. Thirdly, what I understand is that this novel solution can only come once this decision of the US Supreme Court is struck down or overruled by a subsequent decision. So, I am not as familiar as the procedure in the going against this judgment in the United States, but I believe that there has to be a way of challenging this decision, and that needs to be done today. And only then, once this decision is challenged, only then can we come to a novel solution which will be in the spirit of the law and which will then perhaps not be detrimental to the citizens of the country. So as to say.
I think Parichita has covered most of the lot, and regarding what you said, a novel solution in this regard will only happen after this particular law has sort of been overruled. Like, there has to be a way in order to move past this, and before it sort of does the damage that it's going to. Like, it's not exactly unpredictable per se. And secondly, I think this is really like more of a medical sort of a situation. It's a medical decision more than anything. Like, it's about the safety of the mother, it's about the safety of the fetus, it's about the stage. There's a lot of conditions. So, like, if there is one blanket law, that will have, it would be problematic, because then you will have to have too many exceptions. Now, who is going to look into these exceptions? Who are going to solidify those precedents again? Then you will have a surge of cases in these regards in every jurisdiction.
So basically, what I understand from the both of you at this stage is, and please feel free to correct me with further exemplification if required, is what you both of you believe, and also something what I also believe in, is essentially this judgment of Dobbs versus Jackson not only just overturned Roe versus Wade, but also at the same time, it did not stop abortions in the country per se. It now prohibits safe abortions, which could be medically done by a trained professional. Rather, people are now going to get, more jugaru, as the Indian term goes, and try DIY abortions and all of that.
Absolutely. Like, I think this was the case. Like, this sort of lot of deaths in this regard, what you are pointing out, Vivekda, happened, before Roe versus Wade and all of that, and even after, for that matter, in many states. It has always gone, because you have attached, it's mostly because there needs to be a destigmatization of this entire thing. Like, it's so stigmatized, and why is it hard to talk about? We have to see that it is not that anymore, at least. And even if there has been developments in that regards in the last 50 years, something like this is completely undoing that. Absolutely undoing that effort that we have we are trying to come out of I think, like, into modern civilization. We are going towards modern civilization. We are trying to refine our thought process and everything. And so that's what, like, if at all anything is required in this particular field of sort of legal legislation, is that you need to fine tune it perhaps from what Roe versus, you need to, look into it on a more case by case basis. You will have to have more data regarding all of this in order to ultimately come to a novel solution, like you said. But as of now, this sort of puts a stop on any of that.
Parichita, your thoughts on the matter?
I actually wanted to point out this thing, that since Roe versus Wade, whatever developments have happened, somehow the right to get an abortion has, been made a tad bit more stricter every time. What I think is that as long as the legislature tries to take a call on this particular topic, the solution isn't going to just appear. This is something where a medical diagnosis is the first most important consideration. Secondly, like Aditya correctly pointed out, and so did you, Vivek, that by putting such kind of a ban, it's not like you're stopping abortions. You're just making it extremely unsafe for everybody. Because there are over-the-counter pills, there are practitioners, doing it behind closed doors, and it's only going to jeopardize the lives of the women because they are not able to get adequate medical assistance when it comes to aborting a child. We should not forget that, this is not just a minor ailment that can be just, sorted by a visit to a physician. No. This is something...
Yeah, if I could just cut to something
please,
real quick, that is regarding what you're saying. So, like Vivekda mentioned that in a lot of states, people are also, sort of going into the belief that where life begins at fertilization, that sort of an approach might be taken into legislation or their, sort of legal structure there. So, that might also create a lot of problems for birth controls in that regards. If you're considering that, life begins at fertilization, then you're completely is there a way then to actually abort at all?
This debate is, not going to stop anytime soon, because if life begins at fertilization is the argument coming from the pro-life contenders of pro-life and ideology, then I think the pro-choice ideology also has some counter arguments to state that then, why should you just think that it begins at fertilization? Why not even prior to that? The whole point that to my understanding, and this is a very personal belief that I have, is that when it comes to aborting a child, it should not be anybody else's decision but a woman.
Exactly.
Who
Absolutely.
is holding the child. However, certain things need to be considered. The circumstances in which such choices are being made by said women. Because if I look at our own country in India, there are sections of the society where women are pressured into aborting their child because we have a whole other set of problems when it comes to prenatal, infanticide.
Yeah, we have the PCP entity. We have the PCP entity.
So we sort of ban, prenatal determination of sex in this country, which is not so in the United States. We also have laws when it comes to abortion, which are, I think, fairly more evolved than what is going on in the US today.
Absolutely.
Right?
Definitely.
So coming from a third world country where women can still go to a doctor and get safe medical help when it comes to termination of pregnancy, I'm happy.
Take that, USA.
So
have you imagined, actually they have legit said that nothing in the history of United States have supported people's approval of abortion, but they are all in favor of guns apparently.
Let's not even get into guns, dude.
That's a different animal to tackle at a different stage, not today.
They would much rather have these babies crawl out and just get shot by somebody, at school.
I wonder what happens to their pro-life analogy then. Isn't that life as well? But never mind. Let's try.
I'm telling you, their take on abortion is, retroactive in nature.
But
sort of that.
Correct.
But you know what? Interestingly, guys, and this is going to be something that after I read this, I was actually quite shocked. So Norma McCorvey, who was basically Jane Roe in the Roe versus Wade case, in whose favor the decision was rendered, she eventually had a change of heart and became an anti-abortion supporter. She joined the pro-life plan.
Wow. Wow.
Totally helping the cause here.
So, with that, let us end this episode.
Let's just end this episode.
We started on a very serious and morbid note, and we are now ending on a more puzzled note as to why did we even begin. So yeah, thank you, Parichita. Thank you for joining us on this episode.
Thank you.
Great to have you over, and we look forward to having you in further episodes as well, if time permits. Like
It's
mostly
your
for you.
turn. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, mostly you, because you have a full-time litigation schedule.
Yeah.
But yeah, lovely to have you on.
I can carve out a couple of hours on a Sunday, Vivek. Anything for you guys.
Done. We can
Perfect.
work out a schedule. And Adi, I'll catch you in the next one.